What is it that you do? You're coming into a business for the first time. You've never been in it before. Lead me through, step by step. What's the process that you would go through if you were helping me with my business?
Well, the first thing I want to do is to get acquainted with them as an individual person. Can I relate to them in venues other than their business? So we spend a little time getting acquainted. And then, well, I love business. That's why I do what I do. So I put myself in the business manager's shoes and I start raising a whole lot of questions. What is my business all about? How am I generating revenues? What's the nature of my customer? Are some customers better than others? How many revenue streams do I have? Do I have a history in this business of creating new customers? Am I losing some of my customer base? So I'm putting myself in the shoes of that owner to get very familiar with what his business is really all about. Where has it come from? And then we start looking at the future. What is it really possible to do with his business?
Now, how do you help him do that? Do you open the books and just look at the numbers? Or do you do something different? How do you do it? What's the process?
Well, again, I ask questions, but it doesn't take very long to lead towards looking at a set of financial statements. The basic questions are all about the guts of the business. What are you selling? How much of it are you selling? What's been the history over the past 5 years? Are you stagnant? Is it growing? Is it declining? And what do you think is causing that? So I try to draw out as much knowledge about the business as I can so that I've got his knowledge in my head.
How do you actually deliver the information so that they can make sense of it?
Well, the end result is a set of financial projections, but my starting point here are the revenue streams. And one of the first questions I ask in terms of measuring those revenue streams is, I want to know the number of transactions you're conducting within a time frame. It could be a month, it could be a year. Are those transactions coming from customers, or are we looking at something a little bit different, like in house sales? They have estate agents that are selling homes. So the real revenue driver there is the number of homes being sold in a specific time frame by agent. So you have to find a common ground here in terms of what drives the revenue stream. It could be the number of salespeople and how many transactions they're producing. It just depends on the nature of the business. A manufacturing company would be the number of units sold by product line. So I want a history of that before I attempt to move it to the future. And having got acquainted with the lines of revenue, I then want to know what are the variable costs involved in each of those revenue streams. And what we are going to arrive at is a line called gross margin. That is revenue minus the associated variable cost to arrive at a gross margin by product line. And that in turn forms the basis for looking at the level of overhead that's involved in generating those sales. Do the overheads make sense? Can we compare them with a peer group through industry statistics? What we need to remember is that margin has to cover overheads and produce a profit. Otherwise we might as well take our equity in the business, cash it in and leave it in a bank account somewhere.
You look at these financial projections. What are the typical types of actions that you would recommend? Are your actions mostly financial? Are they strategic or tactical? Are they about sales? What do you do?
Well, it's probably a combination of all that. I like to strategize with the business owner because I'm trying to learn where he feels he is in his business cycle and business life and where he'd like to take it. Now that inevitably is going to involve strategy. In terms of the numbers, the real question is, how do we go from this point A to point B in the future? That certainly involves strategy, but it also gets into tactics. How are we going to achieve this? What additional resources are going to be needed? More employees? Who will go out and get more customers? Are we going to need more production capabilities? Whatever's required in a realistic sense in order to grow that business from point A to point B. Now, it's the process of asking questions that gets to the answers.